I'm Scott Clements, Managing Director of Inertia Engineering. I'm joined here today by Nader Ibrahim from O2LA. Thanks for joining me today, Nader. So we're actually here to discuss opportunities with the Olympics and where we see some real opportunity going forward. Would you like to do a brief introduction of?
Sure. We're a landscape architectural practice, and we're really kind of have a strategic direction to dwell in the public realm. So this is, so I guess what we're talking about today really excites me.
We've got this huge opportunity of the Little Olympics in front of us. Is there, what's your broad feeling about where it's going with planning and precincts and how it can affect the public realm positively?
Yeah, I'm definitely excited. I think so much of what's being put forward is actually going to be something that actually benefits our community for a long time. And I see all the precincts that are up for grabs, and you see them all being improved. So whether it's Victoria Park, Barrambin, or Woolloongabba or others, there are so many benefits for the community. The future generations. And I'm really excited about that. So I'm definitely the half glass full kind of person when it comes to that stuff.
And we've talked about before and connected probably a lot via LinkedIn, both of us putting our voice out there about the real opportunity that this brings, and that it's not 2 weeks, it's not 4 weeks, it's decades and decades ahead. Can you just sort of delve into why, or why does that small event? How can we leverage it into something much greater for the good of the residents?
Yeah, well, I think I think what we know as an industry is that it's really that these things are a catalyst, and the catalyst only for the Olympics is the catalyst, but the legacy is far greater. This whole idea of precincts that, such as a great sporting precinct that we're going to now embark upon, you can just see the benefits of that for generations, and likewise with other precincts where we got an opportunity to reimagine how they can be, and some really urban design principles that will drive this. So the infrastructure is happening, but it's up to us as an industry to make sure that we're actually gaining the benefits for the whole community, which we will for the region, I think. So yeah,
and to me, one of the big, I guess, urban design 101s is that it has to be connected to the area around it. It can't be seen as a one-off thing. It's got to go, well, what does it look like on day one? How does that connect to the people, whether it's through public transport or linking the roads or linking boulevards? What does it connect on day one? What does it connect? How does it connect on day 101? And then 50 years later, is it still connecting?
I think that's the key one, isn't it? And I think you're right. It is urban design 101, connection. And connection in every respect, right? Connection in terms of movement of people and being able to freely move, but connection in terms of connecting to place, like feeling like you belong somewhere. So connection is such a broad term, but such an important term. So I'm with you 100%. It is about that, and so many other aspects. But connection is probably the foundational principle of what we're doing here and what we should be doing.
Yes. Well, there's no community without connection as well, is there? So,
absolutely, yeah. Right. So it's really far-reaching, isn't it? It's beyond movement. It's a lot more. And so it's exciting. It is exciting to be part of that, because we can absolutely make sure as part of what we do that we can instill that in any project we work on.
And picking up on connection, when we first connected on this piece of work, I think we both shared that there's a real opportunity with this particular precinct we're about to talk about today, which is the Gabba precinct, and that it's broader than just a potentially stadium arena or a couple of buildings precinct. Why do you think that there's such a huge opportunity there?
Yeah, I think when you first made contact about this, I probably didn't get the sense of how broad the precinct was. I think I was personally thinking much more smaller scale. But when you kind of indicated that, hold on, it's beyond this. It's, there's an opportunity to bring this entire precinct together. I think that kind of really rammed home how important it was. I'm kind of glad you connected because I think we've embarked on a bit of a journey to really reveal what can be for our city.
Yeah, and ultimately, at the moment, I think we both agree that it's a completely underutilised part of the city. It's within 2 kilometres of the city. It's elevated. It's going to have a great public transport network to it, and the region that we're talking about that could benefit, even just the immediate region. That's taking aside everything else in Brisbane and people that want to go there. The immediate region is half the size of the CBD, and that's what really. When I started measuring it out on near maps, that what really hit home to me. I'm like, this is not small. We've got to do this right because we've got to get over 50 years the rest of that development right too, and this is the catalyst for it.
Absolutely, and it's a cliche, isn't it? The crossroads, but this is it, right? We've got an opportunity now in the history of the city, probably once in 100 years. I don't think I'm overstating that. Because of everything that's going to happen in this precinct. We get one really good shot at it, and that's now. That's it. Now.
Yeah, no one's going to be spending billions of dollars on it any time in the future after this is done. And
no, that's right.
Yeah, and that money has to be served as a catalyst to the rest of what comes, not just a blop on the map by itself, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that goes back to your earlier point about connectivity beyond our site, right? So it's, really this is an important piece within the urban fabric of Brisbane, massive and really important. So, yeah, pretty exciting.
Yeah. But we do know there's some real challenges with this site too, and ones that we've talked about and hope we've come some way to proposing a solution for. What do you see as the biggest problem or the biggest challenge here?
Yeah, I think you and I have spoken quite a lot about the transport artery that comes through. This is the transport artery for south and east of Brisbane, and that's what's dissected Woolloongabba, and probably been something that's been that's been a downfall really for Woolloongabba for such a long time. That's the biggest challenge. The biggest challenge is what that does for the people, the residents of Woolloongabba and Brisbane, because it absolutely disconnects, it fragments, it isolates. These are all the things that we've been discussing over the time that we've been looking at it together. Then the idea about great urban places is connectivity, and we've got this transport artery of Stanley Street, Vulture Street, 4 to 5 lanes each, and a busway canyon that dissect the site. That's not a very good start. So we really need to overcome. That's the key thing we need to overcome. And that's consistent with our discussions really.
I mean, those roads may as well be rivers intersecting these islands that we call it. We've been calling them isolated islands. The only good thing is that if it was rivers, it'd be nice to look at. And it's not nice to look at now at all.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we know it detracts. We know it absolutely detracts not just from the connectivity, but the amenity. No, we've had these constant discussions. Who wants to be sitting on a 5-lane, essentially motorway? So there's that bit about being in the place, which you won't want to be in if you're a resident. But then there's the bit also that it actually forms a barrier to connectivity beyond the Woolloongabba precinct, right? So it's kind of got a lot of issues going with it, but that's the key one, isn't it? The big one.
Well, we know how bad it is by what happens during game day. They shut the road down because it's unsafe to have people and cars there at the same time. And if you're not going to the game, you're upset because the road's shut down because that's the only way to get to the games. And if you're going to the games, you're okay, but then there's nowhere else to hang around because people don't want to stay there anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's probably why it's pretty close to our heart that part of this is not just about what happens in the isolated islands of Gabba East and Gabba West, as they're being referred to, but how we consider it as a whole. And if we consider it as a whole, as kind of we've been thinking about over the last several months, we know there's some really positive solutions that really help us navigate those problems that are currently faced.
And Stanley Street itself, there is a theoretical precinct there that has always struggled to survive. An extension of the same issue, that it's not a nice place to be, and businesses have struggled there.
Again, I mean, if you're a restaurant there or any kind of commercial enterprise, you've got this great northern aspect, but you're looking out over 5 lanes of tarmac, thinking about the microclimate and the uncomfortable. It's not just about what you see; it's also about the radiant heat that comes from that, and then beyond that, a busway canyon. Right, clearly not an attractive place, not an inviting place, not something that Brisbane really should be proud of for a commercial centre.
No, and then that then plays itself out with the development to the south of it. That there's been a few precincts, or there is a whole obviously priority development area going on at the moment, and there's been a few apartment projects developed down on the corner of Main Street and Stanley, but not much else. And when we take walks through the streets at the back there, it's not a nice place to be at all, because they're not attracting anyone. That no one wants to be there.
Well, this is it, isn't it? I think you think about all that it has to offer. A future railway station, Cross River Rail, a future metro station, that's kind of been shelved because of obviously the desire to spend money elsewhere at the moment. But all these things are positive elements, but you actually can't reap the rewards and the residents can't reap the rewards because the precinct is not an attractive precinct to be in. But it obviously offers a lot of opportunity because that infrastructure is there.
Yeah. And I suppose the other thing that has been in the news, or the press, I guess, previous with the development or the proposed development of the Gabba, and this is going back a while when we were talking about putting a stadium back there, is that sort of heritage aspects as well, the school itself and whatnot. There's a lot of strong connection to that location too.
There is, isn't there? Like the school is 100 plus years. The old Woolloongabba police station, 100 plus years old. We know the Woolloongabba post office is, again, that's a heritage listed. And there's Aboriginal heritage that goes back thousands of years as well, all within this precinct. So again, opportunity to flesh that out as part of this, so people can connect to their history. Clearly.
Well, let's talk solutions, and I think there's obviously one big idea that you've come up with, and we think that really brings forward all those opportunities while probably taking care of a lot of the constraints. Do you want to talk through that?
Yeah. I think going back to what we kind of have agreed, it was maybe one of the key problems, which is the transport artery. It's how we overcome that. Is there a way to overcome that? And as those discussions that we've had around repurposing the busway corridor, which is quite wide. So repurposing that busway corridor as a tunnel and co-locating both Stanley Street's vehicular traffic and buses in that tunnel, so that it actually enables an uninterrupted public domain above, connecting the existing commercial and residential precincts to the south of Stanley Street, a new high street, arena, and then surrounding public plazas and parks. So that's a massive transformation that we think will add value.
Yeah, so basically taking the cars off the road. They're there and they can still get through uninterrupted, probably during concert or game days, but do not intersect with pedestrians at all.
Absolutely, and so that removes this whole thing about these islands that we've currently got, right? By co-locating that transport in one spot and in an area where that's actually got space for it, we can actually have a connected public realm You know, one that has high amenity versus low amenity, which is currently there. So there's, you know, that's the big. We think that's a key move to transform this precinct.
And what does that do for what's left of High Street or Stanley Street, if it's still called Stanley Street at that time? What will that end up looking like?
So you know, I guess then it's this the you know, developing that further. It's okay. What makes sense here? So this, you know, we actually want to create a high street that's high amenity, that people are happy to go to. So this low speed high street, which it will really be in the alignment of Stanley Street now, but you know, it'll be a high street, maybe Stanley Street Lane, who knows? But this idea that the existing commercial that's on the south of that will be renewed, right? It'll actually be something where, it'll be revitalised because it'll actually have high amenity at its doorstep versus the motorway at its doorstep, you know, and then the idea of embellishing that further with some food and beverage that not only supports the local residents but also supports the arena, which we know is happening. So that feels like a nice solution for the community.
Yeah, because instead, if we maintain the road where it is, we end up with a high street as it is now, and maybe that could be improved a little bit with some landscaping. A road and then a parkland around an arena that are all disconnected from each other, rather than being able to leverage off each other for, you know, food and beverage opportunities, retail opportunities, and then on the other side the parkland and entertainment precinct.
Absolutely. And I think this is something, you know, we've discussed. Either way, if we don't do something about this 4 or 5 lane, let's call it a motorway, because that's essentially what it is, it'll still detract from the amenity of the place that we're looking to, you know, we're trying to attract people to this space, and that's not a welcoming space. It's not an inviting place, is it? You know, still having a 5-lane corridor for vehicles.
And we've sort of thought, and I just thought slightly differently during the discussion today, but we've seen that exemplary in Little Stanley Street on Southbank, where there's a road there, but you wouldn't even know about it. It's such a low-speed, small road opposite a great parkland, which is a really great example of urban renewal in Brisbane going back decades, and a retail and residential precinct. That's sort of how we see that potentially.
And, you know, I think most Brisbaneites would have ventured out that way to sit on Little Stanley Street and see what that could look like, and I think we've all been there, and I was only recently there for a staycation actually, and it just it's actually quite a beautiful space to be in. This idea that you can actually feel like you can linger because it's actually comfortable to do so, and visually connect to this parkland. Essentially, where I think we are talking about a perfect exemplar for what we're trying to do at Woolloongabba.
Yeah. The only thing that I think we've got even an advantage on that was probably 2 things. One, obviously, there's a major transport link going in there, but the other one is the heritage element that you know, the likes of James Street or Little Stanley Street don't really have. We've still got quite a few beautiful heritage buildings that are probably completely underutilised at the moment on Stanley Street.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what we know is, and going back to what we discussed earlier, is connection. People want to connect to their history. But I think the other part is scale. You know, like what we know is that southern part of Stanley Street, 2 or 3 stories high by and large, is a human scale. You know, so that's another reason why people are happy to linger, right? It's human scale. So, you know, so I think getting that scale right, that's part of this discussion as well for, you know, the northern food and beverage precinct that we've discussed as well.
But then there's obviously opportunities for further development going south of there in that underutilised light industrial commercial precinct that I see being like what Aria's developed at Fish Lane, you know, increased density around laneways leading on to that precinct.
And I think you could certainly argue that if we're creating that amenity in a new high street, in a revitalised high street, well then you'd like to think that developers, councils, governments can see the value in actually lifting density, because there's actually an attractive place to go to, you know, versus now, I mean, if you're living in that area, you really don't have a high street to go to. You might have a small high street. You wouldn't argue that's a high street. It's more like a restaurant precinct in the Logan Road.
Yeah.
But it's not the same as the original. And that is the original high street for Woolloongabba.
Yeah.
We know it is from some of the earlier imagery, you know.
And as usual, we made the mistake in the 70s and 80s of taking it over by cars. We got obsessed by cars.
Yes, and and we removed the trams that were on there too. So it's one of those things, isn't it? So I'm certainly a half glass full type person in that it's never too late. And I think going back to again what we discussed at the start, we're at the crossroads. We've got an opportunity to right some wrongs here, but we've got to get in there early, and we've got to make sure that these opportunities are there for all to see, so then we can harness some support.
Yeah, and we're obviously we've got a great opportunity with the arena itself and development plan for there. At the same time, EDQ Economic Development Queensland have got a priority development area over a large portion of that suburb actually. But without solving this, none of that's going to happen or happen well, is it? It's going to be, and my biggest concern, probably going back a few years with the Olympics in general, is yes, we'll do a good Olympics, but will we do a really good legacy? And that's the whole point of having the Olympics, to be honest, I think.
Absolutely. And I think, if we go back to the PDA, it picks up on some really good things like connectivity beyond the precinct. However, from what we've uncovered, the real opportunity rests with how we manage the transport artery. That's really the key. We can actually do all the other things, but we've got to manage that transport artery.
Talking about connection to the precinct, then, how do we envisage that broader connection? It's we talked about the areas to the south that can be rezoned and developed, but how does this precinct sit within the rest of Brisbane as an important thing as well, and how do people get there, and how does that work? Yeah,
well, I think we can certainly start with the good work that the PDA prepared, like this whole idea of I think it was the creek to cliffs, basically the Norman Creek corridor connecting through north through the Woolloongabba precinct that we've been talking about, and onwards to the Kangaroo Point Cliff. So that's a really important connection to make, and I think that's important. Obviously, we've talked about the public transport connections, but probably what we haven't talked about is the internal connections as well. So maybe we could talk about that. And if we talk about how we navigate our way through the site, we can. I guess we've been talking about the arbour or Woolloongabba arbour. And why? Connected shade. You're just about to enter the next few months, which we know can be quite oppressive, So arbours, and connected shade is really a prerequisite for us. So the idea of connected shade, but the idea of an arbour does more than that. It's intuitive wayfinding. Yes. It defines a pedestrian thoroughfare, a primary one, but it links the precinct. We've spoken about East and West, or others have spoken about Gabba East and Gabba West, but we want to connect the two, So this whole idea of linking the two and beyond, again, to cliffs and beyond, and to the creek is really, really important. But the other part of that, is how the arbour contributes to the city language, So, we want to build on the success of South Banks Arbour, and as I mentioned before, really recognising that connected shade is a prerequisite for our region, but also where are other opportunities for arbours in major public realm precincts? Victoria Park is a perfect example, and maybe building enough momentum to the point that they assist in defining the identity of our region and our city. And this is where we've spoken about Brisbane, the city of arbours. The
city of arbours, yeah, and that could be something that it's really known for. It's known as the River City, but why can't it be the Arbour City as well? Like you say, we should be, and I think we are in a lot of ways, world leaders at active lifestyle. But the only thing that I think holds us back with this great network of cycle paths and walking paths and areas to run and whatnot is the lack of shade sometimes, and it is oppressive. People are known in Brisbane to get up at 4 o'clock and 5 o'clock in the morning. So they have to, because they've got to get the exercise done before then. Whereas you see people at South Brisbane, because of the arbours, hanging around all day. It's completely different.
Absolutely. I think we've kind of, we talk about shade, but it's connected shade, right? This is the key. There is a difference, and I think we need to push that point, because that speaks to walkability. That really speaks to walkability. And I just going back to that other point about arbours, it speaks to all those things you're talking about. It encourages us to be outside. We've got this unbelievable climate, where we can be outside 365 days a year. Now, some of our other cities in Australia can't kind of say they can do that. We can.
Except for that hailstorm.
That's right. That's true. Yes,
Jump inside
right.
for that
Stay
one.
inside for that one. But, we've got this beautiful microclimate, this beautiful climate, I should say. So let's leverage that. So, the whole concept of arbours and really taking that further is actually about leveraging the subtropical kind of climate that we're in.
Yes.
This concept of layering that subtropical talks about, and so arbours work in a lot of ways. They really do speak to the architecture of our city and our region, actually.
Yeah, they're not just practical, but they're also can be an iconic city-defining feature.
Absolutely, and I think that can contribute to our brand as a city in a world stage. On a world stage, it can contribute to our brand.
Have you been to Bologna in Italy before?
I haven't been.
Yeah, so that's I don't know if it's officially called the City of Arbours, or cloisters, probably more than arbours itself. I think it's something like 18 kilometres of cloisters, generally joined to the buildings in that and older architecture. But I can see Brisbane being a version of that. It's the outdoor version of that, the broader open version of that, with nature intertwined with our arbours. Yeah,
I'll have to add that to the list, Scott.
Definitely. I recommend it highly. Yeah, maybe we'll talk a little bit about the sort of, and I think we know that this is more about the broader region and the broader suburb than just those two precincts, because I think that those two, Gabba West, Gabba East, they can be done well in isolated, but it's probably worth talking a little bit about what we see as really leveraging this opportunity. And I'm probably more interested to an extent in the Gabba East side of things. So that's, for everyone, that's where the Gabba is at the moment. And what we've envisaged in that space and why, I guess.
Yes. So, going back to that other point we were discussing around the fact that we've actually got, a one-way road, heading east and one-way road heading west, and each of them are 4 lanes. So we talked about some solutions on the western parcel that help overcome those issues. And likewise, on the eastern parcel, it's about site planning, isn't it? To create an area where, again, a space where people feel like they want to linger. So the idea of, our, say, mixed-use developments with commercial and activity on the ground plane, and then residential above, but this central green space that actually is, again, protected because we've got this northern and southern building footprint. So that, that protection from, again, that 4-lane road on each side is important to then create a space where people feel like they can gather comfortably. It's inviting, it's welcoming. So that's an important I guess urban design and site planning thing to accommodate, I think.
And the opportunity as well with the Heritage Police Station there to repurpose that for something that's for community as well.
Absolutely. You mentioned earlier about the history. Here we are. We've got an opportunity to repurpose that, as I think we were discussing. Is it a museum that picks up on some of the cultural history of the precinct over the tens of thousands of years that Aboriginals have been here, and also the remainder where the last couple hundred years that Europeans have been here. So we can pick up on all that, and the great sporting tradition of the Gabba.
Yes.
So I think there is that. So we've kind of got this this idea of this green spine, haven't we, between the two building footprints that line Stanley Street and Vulture Street. There's an opportunity for that to be a cultural spine, isn't there? Because we've got the school history on the east, anchored, which anchors the east, and then we've got the old police station on the west, that anchors the west, and there's beautiful green spine in between where we can reinterpret some of the Aboriginal history as well. So we've really got this cultural spine that we can incorporate here. The other part of that is the school, and we've spoken about this, the school currently fronts Wellington Road. It's quite a busy road. So, the idea of actually flipping that, so creating internal low-speed road on the inside that the school can then have a drop-off on a much more amenable type of road for safety of the school, the school community, including kids. That kind of makes sense as well. So there's an opportunity again to fix up some things that aren't quite as we'd like them to be.
Yeah, they've come about in a piecemeal way, and you can see sort of how it came to that. But it's an opportunity to step back and go, well, what if we started again, which we are to an extent? How could this be so much better? And then I suppose as well the school can leverage that green space as well, which ultimately means that instead of us talking about what was previously thought about as a demolition of a school, actually we're giving more to the school, which could potentially make it thrive further. And as the population grows, increase the density of the school because they've got more space to spill out into now as well.
Absolutely. We've spoken about the growth of Woolloongabba, with the kind of initiatives that we're putting forward, people want to live at the Gabba. There's going to be a growth trajectory at the Gabba. So the school that supports the population here needs to grow with it. So absolutely. So that all makes sense to enlarge their campus to at least what it was before. And it's an important part of our history as well.
Yeah. So look, the precinct planning that we've looked at and the connection to the greater suburb is obviously, we believe it's a very strong solution to really a once in a lifetime opportunity, once in many lifetime opportunity. But it still has some challenges to be able to deliver that. And what do you see are some of the bigger challenges that we need to work through? Yeah.
We all work and live in a commercial world, so these things have to stack up, don't they? So the idea of repurposing the busway as a corridor that accommodates both vehicles and buses costs money, but part of what we're proposing brings in money, and one of our ideas is having that hotel precinct on the western side of the site. And the hotel precinct, it may be a series of towers there, but that makes it, there's a logic behind that because it's close to the arena for tourists. It's easily connected, as in getting to the airport and back via the new Woolloongabba station, the Cross River Rail. But having the hotels, which could, you'd like to think they could actually start the planning now because they're on sites that are not actually being impacted by some of the other things we've been discussing. So that could bring in revenue early to then help pay for the new co-located busway and Stanley Street traffic.
Yeah, there's going to be those that say as well that, those hotels could happen whether we did the undergrounding of Stanley Street or not. But I think our point there is that, if it's not an attractive place for people to be, what hotel is going to be developed there anyway? They'll develop something for the arena only, which is maybe 1 or 2 days a week, and that's not enough to sustain a hotel. So they need to create a precinct that people want to come and stay outside of events as well.
Absolutely. And, Scott, you're referring to the everyday. The everyday. This is why people venture to South Bank, because the everyday at South Bank is a high amenity. I can do everything pretty much any day, and it's actually a place I want to linger. Yeah. I want to meet with friends. I want to do all those kind of things.
Yeah, definitely. And I suppose the other big constraint, and it's tied to the money side of things, is the time. It's not easy to move public transport. So I suppose for that we really need the government support, both local and state government, having being stakeholders in the area to get on board and say, look, yes, we want this to happen. And our sort of argument for that is, well, if you want the whole of the suburb to thrive, you need to make this happen.
Absolutely. And I think the other thing to point out is actually it's really fortuitous, isn't it, that they actually put that on hold, the Woolloongabba Cross River Woolloongabba Metro Station on hold. You know, they did that when they announced the Victoria Park Stadium. So, and that's fortuitous because what it meant is that the planning for the Woolloongabba Metro has been parked. So there's an opportunity to think about this as a holistic site and actually think about the outcomes of the site rather than let's do the Woolloongabba Metro and then we'll worry about the other stuff later, which we know doesn't achieve the outcome. In any urban design thinking, we've got to think about everything holistically, how it all pieces together and what's the outcome we're going to achieve. So that's first. So absolutely, ideally now we've got both state and local government who are actually thinking, well, hold on, how do we think about the precinct first and then the metro can simply fit in with that?
Yes.
You know, and we've spoken about things like, the bus parking that's currently there, right? Not the highest and best use. It takes up a lot of space. But the reality is that the arena and the podium above it, you know, they'll be bump in and bump out for that in a basement scenario. So there's no reason really to suggest that we can't still have bus parking in that basement. We can't have the turnaround that exists in that basement. So there's opportunities to still factor in the planning and the things that are required for the metro for the Gabba.
How about a message or messages to the potentially local NIMBYs out there that probably potentially don't want any of this. They don't want to live through, whether they're passing through that area or they're local. They don't want to live through the construction of a new Gabba arena or a residential precinct or particularly a infrastructure changes. They're going, what about me? What will someone think about me? What would your pitch be to them? What are they going to gain from this longer term?
It's always hard, isn't it? It's always hard because what we all have to endure is a period of unrest. It's probably not the right word, but a period of where things are harder. Things are harder for the local residents, harder to get around. But I guess, if we could urge the residents to just think about the end outcome and how that will help generations beyond this versus what's there now and really a band-aid solutions. I think if we can think about that may actually help, because the solutions here or the opportunities for transformation are really there. They really are.
And there's so many points around that too, so that they'll have a connected public domain that they can utilise. If they own property around the area, it's almost likely to increase significantly based on the back of this. We're able to leverage a location that's highly serviced for public transport to increase the density rather than the density spilling out past that. So there's a lot of things to be said for the positive that outweigh, I think, the short-term negative side.
Absolutely, and let's not underestimate the value of a renewed village. I think most people love the idea that they can simply walk to a little neighbourhood centre that's of a really good scale, that's shaded, that you are actually happy to linger in, and these are really important things. So the improvement of the everyday is massive. So again, probably something that kind of we'd ask to just see beyond to see that, because that adds value to the everyday, and that's well-being, right? That's well-being for each of us, and especially the residents who live there.
Well, you only have to look at South Bank prior to the Expo 88 to see what it was like and what urban renewal could do to a whole suburb or whole city really with South Bank, isn't it? It's affected the whole city positively.
Absolutely. I think we probably don't realise, if we haven't ventured too far beyond our own city, we probably don't realise how fortunate we are to have that precinct on the edge of our city, on the edge of the river, and connected as it is. it is not something that you see in every city. It is, and it goes beyond, right? What we know is that that's part of a broader connected edge along the river now. Again, probably not something that a lot of cities can say that they've got, like kilometres and kilometres of connected waterfront. Again, perfect for us because we have a climate that invites us to be outside 365 days a year. So again, it suits us, and this is why it's actually that's why we continue to push it. It suits Brisbane.
Yeah. Any last thoughts on, I guess, considering going forward, what things look like and what I feel like for the population of a legacy for this precinct?
I think we've touched on this, but this idea that this is part of a pretty massive. In terms of Brisbane itself, and you've touched on the fact that the area of this site is massive, and what we know is that by renewing it in a way that's going to be a benefit for the community, it'll actually have a massive impact on our residents. A massive positive impact on our residents, and to think that I don't even know how far South Bank is from here, but to think we've got these two, really the potential for an awesome precinct here, a truly people place. Meanwhile, we've got South Bank, again, not far from here, a true people place. To have those not far from each other, that's massive. So I think it's really exciting to see the potential, and I guess I'm hoping we can realise it.
Yeah, so the same, and we've discussed this before as well, and I think just for me, what puts it into context, I think about how important this precinct is. That I think that the legacy for this precinct is a lot stronger than Victoria Park potentially. Now, Victoria Park is going to have a great legacy within it, but given that we've got a health precinct and a low density residential precinct next to it, it's not going to have the catalyst effect, I think, around it that this can do, and this is ready to do already because of the public transport and because of what the typology of buildings that are around it already.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, Scott. I think the fact that that we've got an opportunity to renew a commercial precinct, a true village heart, which is the everyday. I think while both precincts are going to be absolutely magnificent for our region moving forward, one has the ability to impact the everyday, and that's Woolloongabba Village. It really is, because that's shopping precinct, that's arena, that's tourism, that's the everyday. Yep. So I totally agree, with what you mentioned there.
Yeah, and it's probably missing from the south side of the river, a higher density, something that can be higher density but with amenity in public realm and high streets and villages at the same time. So
yeah, absolutely. So I think it'll hopefully it sets the typology for this is how you do it. We do it well, and people, as they say, when you do things like this, and especially if it's a high amenity, people see it as a great exemplar and they want to repeat it. And so you're right. I don't know if we've got something similar to this, but we've got a real opportunity, and hopefully it becomes an exemplar for how to do things beyond.
Yep. Well, we're going to have to, as I'll borrow from Peter Edwards from Archipelago, and he does the presentation around sort of urban planning around Brisbane, and he goes, everything times two. Everything's going to double. Yeah. So you've got to start to think about where everything's going. Where's the second CBD? Where's the new parklands? Where's the density come?
Yeah, and I agree with that. And I think we shouldn't be scared of that if we do it well.
That's right.
I guess when we first started this discussion, we were talking about this broader precinct, weren't we? But we knew from the outset that, that's way too big. How about that? We knew from the outset that Vulture Street and Stanley Street, were and by the way, Main Street and the Riverside Expressway were these things which dissected our site and really detracted from the amenity big time. Yes. But we were also talking about what the PDA kind of already had considered. This was this. I got it wrong during the earlier part, but this whole thing of creek to cliffs.
Yes.
So there was some good work done there, and I guess we also spoke about Gabba to South Bank, didn't we?
That's right.
So so we've got these broader connections that make sense in the context of the city.
Very easily walkable too. The distances we're talking,
absolutely,
a kilometre and and less. So
so we're talking, as you say, you can't quite make that up, but less than a K, from the Gabba to the southern gateway of South Bank. So so absolutely walkable. But then thinking beyond, this whole thing about this southern part of this precinct up to Hawthorn Street, this zone in here, and how there's an opportunity to connect from the existing that's there as well to the precinct. And obviously we spoke about, this idea of connecting to, these other parks and the green spaces, even like in terms of broader city fabric to Mowbray. Along Wellington there.
Yeah, and the links into Norman Creek as well. We've got this active transport opportunity that create a great little active transport highway through from the east all the way through the Gabba precinct to South Brisbane and the city. Yeah.
So where the PDA kind of picked up on that, I think we're kind of trying to embellish that more, aren't we? This whole idea, well, hold on, let's also find a way to connect to South Bank because that's walkable. It's not far.
Yeah.
We kind of, that was early days, wasn't it? Just that broader connectivity.
And the real opportunity we talk about is it's not necessarily these two areas. It is, but that provides a catalyst for everything around here. It's
absolutely
so significant a piece of land that of scale. Yeah.
Well, and if we look at this, we know that the Gabba is 750 metres long. South Bank is, about the same in terms of length. So in terms of size, they're almost similar, in terms of size. And so, the point you made earlier about the impact of South Bank it is the most visited, I think, destination in obviously it's a parkland. It's this has got more of a tourism focus in terms of the arena, but it's also a residential focus. It's where people are going to live. Yeah. So again, you'd argue that this is actually going to have more impact on the everyday for people.
Definitely.
Because it's where people go to the local bakery. They are going to walk to the bakery because they can and they want to.
And you mentioned it before, and I really like that idea of the Woolloongabba Village idea. Village is probably a slightly understated term for it, but that's what we want to create, a place where there's people coming from outside this place, but there's people living here and being here on the everyday. So,
absolutely. So that was the broader connectivity piece, wasn't it? That we spoke about. Maybe it's worth kind of going in and looking at some of the detail. Like maybe what it looks like now. Should we do that? Because if we see, for example, using kind of Google Earth, what we've kind of got now, so just trying to find the right image, this speaks to what we've been talking about, doesn't it? It really speaks to what we've been talking about, which is the things that we've, from the outset, realised that, this 4-5 lane essentially motorway to the city.
Plus the busway.
Plus the busway canyon. And, again, we spoke about this bus parking, you'd argue not the highest and best use for an inner city area. But what you can clearly see here, is this distance here. This distance here, all right, is far greater than this distance. Yeah. Now, you can see by virtue of this width that we can actually accommodate Stanley Street within here.
Yes.
So the corridor is wide enough to accommodate the two. And the image obviously tells the story about how it fragments, right? So going back to that analysis, how it fragments and isolates, and by virtue of doing that, doesn't enable connection. Or if it enables connection, it's crossing a 5-lane.
That's right.
Not an amenable connection.
Getting some exhaust fumes on the way, and that's it. And it's funny. I've talked to a few people about that particular street in this particular location a few times, and anyone that lives to the east have gone, I know it. Yeah. I know it all too well.
Absolutely. And then if we compare that to what we're proposing as a solution, We've got we've got that perspective drawing that tells the story. We were just seeing that image of what it looks like now.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this is the potential, isn't it? The potential to have that co-located busway and Stanley Street. The busway continues, of course, underground. But then this creation of a low-speed, human-scale high street, food and beverage that supports arena but also supports the everyday of the local residents, having this connected zone from the existing southern commercial and residential all the way through to the arena, versus crossing a four-lane motorway.
And it allows us to increase the green space that we get out of this development as well, while maintaining or increasing the amount of commercial retail space. So.
Absolutely. The net result of public space here is obviously increased.
Yeah.
We know we're going to achieve that in here in the surrounds of the arena via public plazas and parkland. Likewise, on the eastern side with the central parkland.
Yeah, we can have a look at that too, can't we?
And so that's the other opportunity, isn't it, to have this eastern green, isn't it? So this idea that we're connecting via that arbour for both precincts, but then once you get here, what we really have, if I just choose a different colour for the moment, is this kind of connected public realm that does something like this, really.
Yeah.
And actually, sorry, I've actually got that wrong because that includes High Street.
That's true, yeah.
And then it actually filters into these zones as well. So we've really got a much broader connected public realm, haven't we?
Probably worth pointing out that connection into Logan Road precinct as well, so that should thrive and be helped by this connection as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we know is that the PDA had nominated this road to be closed. And we've really taken that opportunity, haven't we, to go, well, actually, if that's going to be closed, let's connect this existing really nice precinct via a land bridge that gets us to Gabba East, via a land bridge that gets us to Gabba West, and have that arbour so people, in terms of wayfinding, know where to go. They're following the primary spine. It's very obvious. Intuitive wayfinding is key. And connected shade. We're using the arbour. It's got layers. It's, distinctly Brisbane, So, yes, it speaks to all of those things. And then going back to the point we were making earlier about, again, we've got this primary kind of road, Vulture Street, 4 lanes, Stanley Street, 4 or 5 here. So, to create that sense of a much nicer amenity in here, we're really using the built form to enclose, still enabling, connectivity, north, south, east, west, but using the built form to enclose through there, to create a place where, again, residents, because, we're talking several residential towers here with some activation on the ground level, but really it's mostly about residential. So this is their local green, isn't it?
Yeah.
This is where they'll want to come every day for a bit of a jog, bit of a sit down on a picnic blanket. And again, you don't want to be doing that beside a 4 or 5 lane motorway or roadway. You want to be doing that in amongst an active edge, which we're really achieving on this southern part of that mixed-use development and on this northern part of that mixed-use development. So then that tells the story, doesn't it? This whole idea of this built form, which encloses, serves its purpose in terms of we needing the density. We want the density. We want more people close to amenity, more people close to services. So it achieves all those things that we want to do as a responsible city.
And the cultural spine that you talked about as well.
Yeah. So here we have the heritage school. We've got the heritage police station. So this cultural spine that between the two. But, in actual fact, really what we're saying is that really extends as well.
It does. Well, we've got a new cultural arena coming in that place. And
absolutely.
then the heritage buildings on Stanley Street itself to connect. So, it's a great opportunity, isn't it?
Just something we were dabbling with.
That's right.
Yeah, so this is looking northeast, isn't it? It's looking northeast. So the old Gabba, the current Gabba is here on that eastern side. And this is kind of indicating the massing. Really, it's a massing diagram, but indicating the massing of the arena. But what it tells the story of is how we can create this really nice scaled main street. So these are the existing buildings through here, the existing commercial, there's some residential, but by actually, again, you can just pick up on the Stanley Street traffic being diverted to the busway and coming out here. On top of that, we have this food and beverage, maybe 4 or 5 story with some residential as well, flanking the high street on the north. We've got the existing kind of commercial on the south, which will hopefully be renewed, but a really nice scaled high street in the middle. But the other thing that we know is that this actually all faces north. So we've got this kind of beautiful northern aspect from the food and beverage, looking out over the public realm. And likewise here, probably not trying to make these too tall. 4 or 5 stories would be good. So we're still getting solar access into that high street, which is really important, especially in the winter months. So this is kind of starting to flesh out.
We talked about it potentially having a bit of a feel of the old Tenerife too, with some heritage buildings around there. And things that are at a 4, 5, 6 story maximum scale. Activated on the ground floor.
That's right.
Where everyone wants to live.
Absolutely, and you can still have a rooftop bar. A rooftop bar something that maybe those who are going for a concert, they might want to end up on a rooftop bar overlooking the public realm, northern aspect. That all kind of feels like it would work. Picking up on the land bridge in the background and the arbour that connects obviously to that eastern side. So and off to the left here is this hotel precinct that we've spoken about. There's no reason why that we can't have a series of hotels on that western side.
Sure. Yeah.
If we look at the plans, this whole question around how much space we've actually got logistically, for the actual busway, and is it worth exploring exactly what those distances are and the widths are, so there's an understanding that this is actually achievable. Sorry, just turning off the layer so we can actually see underneath. So here it is. So the practical things to consider. Stanley Street in this part of Stanley Street is 15 metres wide. The busway, if we look at this, is about 7 or 8 metres wide, right? So 15, 7 or 8, what are we talking? We need no more than 20 or 24.
Yeah.
So we can actually see that we've actually got the corridor in here to accommodate both.
Easily.
Yeah. So and that's where that initial thinking was, can we leverage what's already there? Now, our planning is that when the new metro station goes in, it goes in on this western side. So Stanley Street can do this, and then the metro corridor can continue. So that's like, in terms of site planning, is there space for it? There absolutely is.
Whilst all infrastructures...
What we know is that around here, it's probably, a 6, 7 metre level change. And we know we need 4.5 clearance to underside of structure for, let's say, the major major corridor. So by and large, that's exactly what we can achieve. And the question is how far we want to go, because clearly on this most eastern side, it starts off on grade. So in an ideal world, we are able to kind of excavate a little bit here so we can get this much better connection, but it's not a must do. It's a nice to have. The key is that what we can certainly achieve is that for the vast majority, let's say 150 odd metres of width, right? Because what we know is when we get to about here, right, for 150 metres, we probably could simply put the lid on it in that zone to enable that connection that we've been talking about. So we don't necessarily need to start it here. Sure, it would add value, but we don't necessarily need to start it there. Thank you, Scott. Obviously, you've done this a few times.